Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
It's a time strand. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We have chapter 28, The Madness of Mr. Crouch. And we have Jenn back with us.
Hey guys.
So I know we were kind of talking a little bit pre-episode, but I feel like this chapter is a slow burn until the end, and then it's like an explosion of things.
So many things.
And shockingly, it has to do with Barty Crouch. So, really quick, before we have a little rundown of the chapter, we have a visit to Dobby, where apparently we find out that butterbeer is indeed alcoholic to some extent.
So I always wondered about that in prior scenes because I thought that they had described it with it made them giddy or giggly. So it always felt like there was maybe something to it. We see it's definitely affecting house elves much more severely than anyone. But so in my mind now, I think it's more of like a hard seltzer, right? Because they're not of age yet. They can't have like fire whiskey.
Correct. That's considered a harder edge.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like a Mike's.
But can they have mead?
Beer.
Because we've mentioned mead a couple of times, but then Karkaroff has shut that down to students other than Krum very quickly. So I don't know.
I don't know what the underage drinking laws are for wizards.
I know, and I'm sure you know this too, having been out of the country so often. But yes, there are drinking ages overseas, but it's not really a hard line.
Right.
Obviously, many other countries let younger people drink wine at events and such, like that. I'm sure not fire whiskey or something like to that nature, but butterbeer obviously seems to be. But
falls into that category of just.
I guess so. Have you ever had hiccups when you have had a little bit too much to drink?
No.
That's never happened to me
Never.
either. I don't know where that's coming from.
No, when I read that, I thought, okay, this must be a house elf thing.
It has to be.
Literally not. But they do characterize that sometimes in other forms of media where to indicate that someone's a drunkard, they have hiccups. But I have never once in my life had hiccups from drinking.
The only thing that pops into my head, and this is purely because you are sitting across from me, is a Disney reference with
perfect.
And I can't remember what the scenario or which movie it was, if it was like Cinderella or maybe one of the other ones, but there's like a mouse that hiccups after drinking.
I want to say it's Cinderella.
It might be Cinderella. I just thought of movie with mice Disney, but
right. Julie is listening to this and screaming the answer.
Probably. But that's like the first thought that comes in my head is like when you bring up other forms of media. Maybe it's carbonated.
Yeah.
Because I know there are forms of actual butterbeer that's being made that's carbonated, and that can give you hiccups.
That would make more sense.
Yes.
To me.
And maybe it just falls into that trope, like you said, of the drunk hiccuping in media. I don't know. That's weird. Anyway, there's our alcohol tangent of the day. And there's some more stuff in that visit to Dobby that we'll get into, but we also get Hermione getting the mail, which leads to some interesting developments. We get a Care of Magical Creatures class, which I think goes really well, all things considered. Time jumps. So many time jumps in this chapter, which I know some of our regulars that we have on here and some of our listeners get on me for about there's this huge time jump. This was Mandy Brocklehurst's moment, and we miss it. You never know. There's some Molly Weasley stuff that I want to get into in this chapter.
Oh, I have opinions.
You do too. So there's that. And then we have the third task announcement. And then we have the actual main event of this whole thing, which is the madness of Mr. Crouch. So going back to the Dobby thing really quick. The chapter opens up with, "You saved my life with the gillyweed." And let me tell you, if you've heard our second task chapter, no truer statement has ever been uttered in this series. And I think and they got him the socks, which Dobby really appreciates, which is great. Not sure if that's equal payment or not. Dobby loves it, of course, but Yeah, Dobby came up huge.
Yeah, Dobby was the MVP of
the second task.
Yep.
Unbelievable. What do you I know we had a whole big thing about it, Julie and I. What did you think about the second task as a whole? Or Gillyweed, or Dobby's role in the whole thing?
Yeah, so I didn't really have the same objections to the second task when I read it, maybe the first or couple times. Mm-hmm. I never really liked that it feels like, at least to me, this is the least prepared that Harry is. I don't like the over-reliance on this last-minute save from an unexpected helper. That always felt a little, I guess, cheap to me in that regard. And I also felt kind of bad because he was up late, like, trying to pull an all-nighter right before doing this.
Right,
so, like,
before a life and death thing, not just like a geometry quiz.
Right. So you wake up, I would be exhausted. You're trying to figure, you've suddenly got someone shoving something in your face and you're late to get to... He was so ill-prepared for this task. Mm-hmm. That really stressed me out when I read it.
Yep.
And then one thing that was pointed out, I didn't catch this on my initial reading, but one thing that I've seen criticism of in the fandom for, which I agree with, is that you have all of these students lined up in the bleachers, essentially, to watch this task, and no one can see what's going on because it's all underwater.
It's the most boring thing ever, yeah.
Yeah, I would be so bored to be sitting, you're watching. In my mind, sometimes I fill things in because I just don't think that critically about things like that, so I always imagine, like, they had some sort of setup that they just didn't mention, but... I don't know how realistic
I think that's a good point, though, because when we were reading this for the first however many times, we probably read this for our just personal enjoyment.
Yeah.
You gloss over some issues.
Right.
Or, like you said, you fill in the blanks automatically.
Yeah.
But I think Julie had an interesting statement when she said, it's almost like we're back in AP English. And we're here dissecting all of this.
Yes.
And we're pointing out some loopholes or some like issues that I'm like, I don't know if this makes sense.
Right.
Or I don't know if this is right, or if this is lazy, or if this is great, on a positive spin. So it's kind of interesting to get all the different perspectives. But.
Yeah. Now, that said, I do like the description of the second task. I do find it interesting. I feel like it fits in with he definitely has a hero complex.
Yeah.
It's well established.
I like the idea of the second task.
Yeah.
I just think this is like a clear separation between your three true champions and Harry. Like, the first one was like, okay, Harry can clearly match up here. Yes. Here in the second task, cannot match up.
No.
Cannot do it without a lot of help. So. Yeah.
He had a lot of things go in his favor for the second task. It feels like the second task was much more based on luck.
Yeah.
For him to get through.
For sure. So not as harsh of a take as Julie and I.
Definitely not. Yeah. Definitely not.
We talked in the last chapter with Sirius having all of this information that the trio were not up on. Mm-hmm. Because why? He's stealing profits from people in Hogsmeade, daily profits. And I brought it up, like, how? How in the world, if you're Harry Potter, do you not have a subscription to the Daily Prophet? And if you're Hermione and you want to know as much as you can about everything, why don't you have a subscription to this thing yet?
That is kind of odd.
You're in your fourth year at this point, and some stuff has happened where you might end up in the news. You might want to take a look at it. I get not being, like, obsessed with it.
Right.
But you should know at least what's going on. And she finally gets it here. She finally gets her subscription.
Yes. But, I mean, also to be fair, when you were a teenager, did you really want to read the newspaper?
Okay, to be fair, I did make the newspaper for some of my athletic achievements.
Nice.
When I was younger.
Okay.
So I would end up in the paper. Yes, I did actually go get the Palos Heights regional paper.
Right, okay. Let me rephrase it.
To view my own highlights.
I mean, that's totally understandable. Did you want to read the paper when you weren't in the paper? When you didn't see your name in...
That's fair.
Bold print text.
Sometimes. I admittedly was not super involved in current events like I am now. Harry's in the paper for much different reasons.
Right.
Much more world event reasons.
Yes.
And is it good for him to even read some of that stuff? Obviously, he hasn't been up to this point, and he's turned out okay.
Yeah.
Do you even want to start reading The Prophet about you on a daily basis?
No. If I'm in the newspaper because on a roll, mathletes, whatever.
Right.
Like, I get it because it's a novelty of like, hey, look, like my name's in the paper.
Right.
But like, if it's like an article, especially written by Rita Skeeter about how like deeply affected I am by my parents, God no. I don't want to read any of my personal stuff on the newspaper, especially stuff they got wrong.
I guess just to know what they're saying would be beneficial. Though.
I could see that point, especially when Slytherin is using it against you. But then I could also see the point of like, so for example, they're writing articles about you in the newspaper. I'm already friends with you. I'm not going to read a newspaper article.
Fair enough.
Like, to get to know you. I know you.
If you're Ron or Hermione, yes.
Right.
If you're like a Creevy or something like that.
Right. That's fair. But like for why the trio hasn't had a Daily Prophet subscription yet, I kind of get it.
Ultimately,
but it's good that she finally...
It's needed
yeah.
that, Hermione of all people should probably get it. Because she is interested in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But she's expecting the profit. She doesn't get the profit. No. Instead, she gets a lot of collateral damage from Rita's last article, which was heavy on her being, I believe Julie used the word harlot, between Krum and Harry, trying to get that famous wizard love interest. So she instead receives a bunch of hate letters, some blatantly racist against Muggleborns. I feel like that's a fair comment to say.
Yeah.
And then some of them were borderline like terrorist attacks.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. Like they were assault at a minimum, and
and what we mean by that is they would put hidden charms or hidden materials in these letters that are intended to do some form in various stages, some minor, some major if done correctly, harm to Hermione.
It reminded me of the anthrax scares.
Exactly, 100%. And I get that we've had Dumbledore and Hagrid talk about the letters that they've received.
Yeah.
And I think Hagrid at some point schluffs this off too, is like, you just got to throw them out. You just got to throw them in the fire, which is good advice and the correct advice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're adults dealing with this. And I get, and in particular, Dumbledore's case, I'm assuming he can probably figure out if there's a charm or a chemical or potion or something embedded in this, because he's Dumbledore. This is a kid. And first of all, you have to be a pretty sick individual to be sending harmful materials to a child.
Oh, yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
I don't really care too much what this is a 14-year-old girl. No,
yeah. I think even if she wasn't 14, don't send hate mail that could harm someone.
Period.
Is like pretty good advice.
And
solid life advice.
Why are you sending...
Right. Also, why do you care that much?
Why do you care about a teenager's love life?
Right.
If you are a adult witch or wizard and you are that much involved, and look, we're in an age of Twitter.
Yeah.
Granted, Twitter, you can't physically harm someone through Twitter, but you can do a lot of damage on social media nowadays. And that's been happening for a while, and a lot of it comes when you're a teenager in high school and you're a little bit more emotionally vulnerable.
How many news articles have we seen about teenagers killing themselves because they've been bullied, cyberbullied
100%.
by people? I mean,
it's awful.
Out of hand.
This is insanely ridiculous. And how does Dumbledore not firmly step in at some point?
How do they not have someone checking the mail? There's no mail screening. You can just send anyone anything.
You don't think, I know Dumbledore sees the prophet.
Yeah.
Or whatever articles Rita's putting out there.
Yeah.
He knows, this could be a problem. We should probably do something about this. But per Hogwarts law, nothing is done about this, and students are put in danger. Problems.
I was a little bit surprised that they don't have some sort of not mail filtering. I don't think that they should be, necessarily reading or too much Big Brother surveillance with mail, but maybe some level of just checking that the things that are being sent don't have hexes or jinx or material that could be harmful. I feel like there's got to be some...
Do you think the owl is aware? and the owl's like aware of what's in the letter and then just slowly puts a leg out there and like quickly retracts it and flies off.
I have to hope that the owl is not an accomplice in all of this. Because I don't know what that says if it is.
Moving on to Care of Magical Creatures. I think this is another solid lesson from Hagrid. We get our first look at Nifflers. And I say our first look, small spoiler for the Fantastic Beasts movies, but a Niffler plays a fairly large role in those movies. Yeah. So here we get our first look at it in the entire Harry Potter world. And obviously they're creatures that kind of dig for treasure or are treasure hunters of a certain way. They don't have to dig for it. They can just root around in whatever, trash, houses.
And they're described
your pocket, whatever.
True. And they're described as cuddly.
They are. And all of the students really enjoyed this lesson. It was a universally well-accepted lesson, which is very hard to accomplish.
And I would argue well executed.
Yes.
Like, Hagrid had some forethought. He knew exactly what he was going to do to demonstrate it. He still made it fun and engaging for the students while they learned about this animal and got to watch the animal in action. It pretty much checked almost everything you could want, I think, from a Care of Magical Creatures lesson, which, as we know, is kind of a rarity from Hagrid.
This is 2 in a row from Hagrid that are solid.
Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, we're getting on the right track.
He's stepping it up. I
think Grubbly playing was a reality check for him of like, oh, this is how a teacher should sculpt this class.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
So kudos to him for figuring this out and putting it together. He's clearly capable.
Very well done.
There is a downside to this.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Nifflers were digging up... First of all, where did Hagrid get all of this leprechaun gold?
Where does Hagrid get anything?
That's a fair question. But Hagrid had all of this leprechaun gold that he dug in for the Nifflers to go search for. And obviously it disappears after a couple of hours. So Ron realizes that all of the leprechaun gold that he obtained and gave to Harry in payment for the omnioculars disappeared. And then he gets awfully snippy with Harry about it. And, he questions him like, why didn't you tell me? Which Harry has the most honest and truthful response ever of like, dude, there was a lot going on. Yeah. I truthfully did not notice.
And I understand Ron's point of like, how do you not realize that money has gone missing? Because to him, it's
several galleons,
so,
which is expensive.
A non-insignificant amount of money, especially to Ron, who probably has not had access to that, if at any point in his life. But also there were a lot of things that happened right after. I'm 100%. I have empathy for Ron in this situation. I'm 100% on Harry's side. I don't know if you gave me $500. I'm sure it wasn't even that. But if you gave me $500 and then we got attacked by some Death Eaters and accused of conjuring the Dark Mark, and then there was a house elf that was involved and someone stole my wand, I don't know that I would really be tracking, especially from someone like Harry who's very generous in general.
Yeah.
He probably, I'm sure he wrote that off as just I want to have fun with my friends. Let me buy some omnioculars for everybody. Mm-hmm. Isn't thinking of it, doesn't view it in the same way as Ron initially. So then when a bunch of things happen that are kind of scarring and really big and dramatic, of course I'm not going to worry over. I mean, $500 was a bit of an exaggeration. $50. I'm not going to stress that much about it. I've already written it off, and I'm way more concerned about why someone stole my wand and why there was a dark mark. That, I'm so preoccupied with that.
And I think it's those reasons that not even Ron can fully doubt or go after. So as petty as the argument that he starts here might be, I do give him credit for dropping it fairly quickly.
Yes. It always stressed me out reading it because I thought it was going to be another fight between them, but it's nice to see him take a step back and be okay. And even Hermione starts kind of trying to be lighthearted with him to jolly him out of it.
Well, he has this statement at the end of, I hate being poor, which I think normally can be a throwaway line, but what followed it is the line of Harry and Hermione taking notice of it and both not knowing what to say.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a more interesting line than the actual quote of I hate being poor.
They've never had to confront it that directly.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like maybe what's also driving some of Ron's anxiety with this is not only the monetary aspect, but that he always feels pressure to be something. Like he's in a family of a bunch of children, and I think there is some pressure to live up to, you know, Charlie and Bill and Percy to a maybe smaller degree. Harry, even though he also grew up poor, doesn't have that underlying insecurity because he knows that Dudley is just a brat.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost feel like some of what is driving this is it's not just the monetary aspect of it, but it's also the constant feeling of needing to be more or have more or do more.
Right.
And that is exacerbating kind of Ron's perspective on it. Like, yes, he doesn't have as much money as other families or other children, and he doesn't have all of those things, but he also feels like he's a failure for not having those things. I don't know that Harry views it the same way.
It's an interesting kind of line to just take note of.
Yeah.
Where this is the first time I think either one of them was just left speechless by something.
Yeah.
Anyone has said, really, for that matter.
I wouldn't know how to respond if someone said that to me freshman year of high school.
That's true. Well, even now it could be an awkward situation.
Right now I'd be like,
All right. So, ultimately, speaking of other awkward situations, we have other awkward situations to discuss. And I think we both took note of this one. So, after one big time jump, we get the Easter holidays. And per large holidays, Molly Weasley sends gifts to the students. And Harry gets a massive big gift. And Ron gets a massive big gift.
Yeah.
Hermione, not so much. Got something.
Yeah, got a little chicken egg.
Not nearly what Harry and Ron got. And my point on this is Molly's got a little bit of an issue here.
There has never been a time where I have reread this and not been mad.
Yeah.
Like outright indignant. Molly Weasley is such a good mother figure to Harry.
Mm-hmm.
And this, to me, breaks it a bit. Like, I know that everyone is human and has their own flaws and has their own weak points. But for someone who's raised 7 kids and, like, pseudo-adopted Harry and met Hermione on multiple occasions by this point, where is any effort to understand the situation? Like, she doesn't hear this from Ron. She doesn't hear this from Harry. She doesn't hear this from Hermione directly. I'm sure she's not hearing anything from Fred and George. She reads one article and decides that article is more truthful than any of her interactions with anyone, doesn't ask any questions, doesn't send Ron an owl and say, hey, I saw this thing. Are things okay? What's going on? Asks no questions, just immediate judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And then sends her something clearly lesser than everyone else as like this statement of, I do remember you, but I don't like you as much as the other people. That has always bothered me.
Yeah.
Like, as a mother figure, really feel like you should have done a little bit more work before you came to any sort of conclusion about your child's friends.
100%. And I think this is the one flaw that you could really point to in Molly Weasley.
Yeah.
Which we have been very complimentary of Molly Weasley, deservedly so.
Because aside from this, she's fantastic.
Yeah. The issue here is this isn't the only time.
We have seen her also fall hook, line, and sinker for Lockhart.
Exactly. Yes. Another great example. So Molly Weasley has some questionable judgment.
Yeah. She snap judgments.
A lot of snap judgments and I think that does sometimes fall to her children, although I think Ron really exemplifies it the most that I could think of any of them.
I wonder how much of that, because we see that he's much calmer, I think, now than in book 1 in terms of like snap judgments. I wonder how much because we see Fred and George, but they've already had a few years out at Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have as much insight into whether or not Fred and George were like that in the same timeline. Like, maybe they've already kind of calmed down a bit.
I like that thought process. I'd apply it to Bill and Charlie.
Okay.
Because we don't know much of them in school.
Right.
And they could have had some of these biases that they've since grown out of.
Right.
Fred and George, I just view them specifically as more leaning towards Arthur. They've always had that connection with Arthur, specifically.
They do. I think Fred, George, and Ginny, I would say, lean more Arthur.
Anyway. Moving forward in this chapter, skipping ahead, we get the third task announcement, which is a big deal. So there's been another time jump down to May. And the third task announcement has them going into the Quidditch Stadium, which both Harry and Cedric take issue with, that the stadium kind of looks a little rough around the hedges.
Groan.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Thank you. So they're upset at the look of the Quidditch Stadium. We do find out a little background info that Cedric apparently speaks to Fleur on a fairly regular basis.
So do you get the impression from this that Fleur's got a bit of a crush on Cedric?
Okay, so that's been brought up before. And I don't know if it's a crush. I would say likes Cedric.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a romantic interest or just like, look, there's a nice, smart, talented boy who's not fawning over me every chance he gets.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice to be around.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Maybe also just speaks to Cedric is just a personable, likable guy.
That's how I kind of take it, is more of like they don't fawn over each other. They're just like, they can be in each other's space and not have to have that like thing above their head, or the Hermione, Krum, Harry thing above their head.
Yeah.
Of just like, yes, we are talented, good-looking, great people. That's it.
Yeah. See, I guess that's the
You get it, I get it, we get it.
I guess that's the reason why part of me thinks that it's maybe just she's nursing a little bit of a crush on Cedric, because she does. So I don't want to get into the habit of like trying to pair everybody off, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because I do believe that guys and girls can be friends and not have any sort of like romantic. But I think I don't know that Fleur seems at this point to be that type of girl who is good with being friends. Like, she snubs a lot of people in Hogwarts fairly consistently, is how it sounds described as by the trio. So it's suspicious to me that the one person from Hogwarts that she befriends is also described as very likable and good looking. Because I'm wondering if maybe it's not that she has a crush on him, maybe she's just kind of elitist and only wants to associate with other people that she deems like worthy.
I mean, you could throw that spin on it.
I would buy that argument. I would say the only reason I pose the question is just because I don't see her as being the most friendly to people unless there's a reason behind it. I think Cedric is. I think Cedric will talk to anybody. I think a first year could come up to Cedric and like stutter in front of him and he'd be like, "Hey buddy, how are you?" Like, he seems like a good guy. Fleur seems very judgmental.
I can see that.
So it's either an elitist thing that's like goes back to Cedric's really good looking, or it's this guy from Hogwarts is kind of good looking and he's helped me out a little bit, like whatever. But
they've always seemed to have, like, of the three champions, Krum has always been like off on his own.
He's very solitary. And
these two have always seemed to strike up some sort of familiar relationship, whether you want it to be romantic or not. So it's always been an interesting pairing. But now we get like specific, hey, Fleur was talking about what she thinks for. I'm like, oh, okay, so you guys are like talking about this. Yeah. Great.
And we also do see a little bit of my point being that so Fleur in this scene is kinder to Harry.
Yes.
But
there's a reason for that. Right.
Which is kind of she doesn't seem to open up to people unless she deems them worthy.
Right. And, Fleur's got reasons to dislike Harry at the beginning of this because she views him as taking some shine away from deserving individuals, which is understandable. Yeah. But it is what it is. But yeah, Fleur thinks the next task is going to be involving tunnels, clearly because Madame Maxine walked in on Hagrid setting up the Niffler.
I never picked up on that. And I love that. That is such a great connection and, like, so demonstrates how information is getting kind of skewed, right? So, like, Madame Maxine and Hagrid are still fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So now she's kind of low-key spying on him and then trying to infer from what he's doing what the next task is going to be, and then failing because it's just this awesome Care of Magical Creatures lesson. I love that. I love that so much. I never picked up on that. I thought that was great.
She's described as obviously she's a headmistress of school. She's a bright woman, but maybe too bright for her own good. She's reading into some things that just don't exist. But what the third task actually is it's a maze. They're slowly building this maze. Cedric and Harry have to literally like climb over these hedges just to get to where Ludo and the other champions are standing. And I love how Ludo's like, okay, like, do you have an idea of what we're doing here? Yeah. And then like silence, and then Krum's just like, maze.
That was wonderful. I loved that.
And I don't know if that's just Krum being the most comfortable with just being like, I don't care, throwing out an answer. Or he was the first one to be like, this is clearly a maze. Like, what are we talking about?
He seems like the kind of guy that's going to stand to the back and, like, if no one else has an answer, then he'll answer. Like, I feel like he knew it was a maze and he was waiting for someone else to say it, and he's like, fine.
I mean, truthfully, this should be really obvious, right? You're literally crawling over hedges.
Right. Why was this hard?
So the idea is you must navigate the maze and be the first to touch the Triwizard Cup, which would be at the center of said maze.
Yeah.
You will encounter some creatures and some particularly interesting spells along the way, so be prepared. And the order of which they'll enter the maze is their current standings. So Cedric and Harry, being tied for first place, will get a head start into the maze, then Krum, then Floor. So that's the way they'll enter, and then here's where the crux of this chapter actually picks up, and it's at the very, very end of this chapter. But they're all breaking... By the way, side note, before we get away from this, you just crawled over hedges that are going to be making up this maze.
Yes.
Once you figure out that this specific thing is definitely the task, if you're like Cedric or Harry or any of them, aren't you like taking particular notice on your way out and being like, trying to look your way through the maze and be like, are there walls here? Because you have an aerial view of this thing.
Yeah, just go to the astronomy tower and look down.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, now that you... Come on.
Yeah, that seems like a massive hole.
Like, at least you can get... And I get, you can't get the whole maze, but you can probably plan out your first, like, I don't know, half hour in the maze, whatever.
Can he take his broom and just fly over?
Could do that too.
3 of them play Quidditch.
Jenn, there's a lot of logic, and we'll get to even more logic issues here in a second. Okay, crux of the matter. Krum pulls Harry aside and wants to have a discussion about him and Hermione. To which Harry's like, look, I cannot tell you this any more plainly. We are not, nor have we ever been, connected in a relationship manner before.
He's so confused.
Yeah, he's like, what could this possibly be about?
Yep.
But there are nice moments. This is a really cool moment, and I'm glad I have you on for this because I have a good analogy for it. But It's like Krum compliments Harry after this whole thing gets sorted out with Hermione.
Yeah.
Krum is much happier.
Yeah.
And he's like, I actually watched you during the first event. You fly really well. This is a guy that you just watched catch the snitch at the Quidditch World Cup.
Yep.
In the final.
Yep.
That's like... for me, that would be like Michael Jordan or something like that, or Kobe Bryant or whatever, coming up to me and being like, jump shot looks really good today. Yeah. Like, that's a solid jump shot.
Serena Williams comes down and is like, your backhand is great.
Right?
I'd be on the floor. I'd be
flying the rest of the year at Hogwarts at that point.
Oh, God.
I'd be telling that story until I'm, like, dead.
Yeah.
Like...
That story's getting printed on my tombstone. Yep.
Anyway.
I get business cards.
Right?
Yep.
Can you take a photo with me real quick?
Yeah.
Anyway.
That was so cute. I love
great.
their bonding. I'm so team Harry Krum bonding.
So Mr. Crouch appears from the forest and it goes into this rambling, almost, sometimes he's lucid, sometimes he's not. Warning, I guess you can call it. He still calls Percy Weatherby, by the way, even when he's like in and out of this lucid state.
That's my favorite part. That's my absolute favorite part in all of this, is he's so out of it, but like even in his moments of lucidity, he's still messing up his name.
Still God.
Also, he's spewing total nonsense because sometimes he's lucid, sometimes he's not, and then sometimes it's a combination of the two. He's mentioning Weatherby in the same sentence that he's talking about his wife and his son.
Right.
Like, it's total nonsense.
This warning is really interesting, and I mean, it's essentially like, I escaped, must warn, must tell Dumbledore, my fault, all my fault, Bertha dead, all my fault, my son, tell Dumbledore, Harry Potter, Dark Lord stronger. That's from the book. I'm not like just picking words all over the place. That's him rambling.
My main complaint with that is when Harry tells Dumbledore eventually what's going on, and he goes, yeah, he said something about Bertha. Like, you didn't, like, the word dead didn't stick out to you? Like, Bertha dead.
I mean, it's been talked about this entire book so far.
Right, oh, he said something about Bertha. Yeah, dead. Literally the next word was dead. Maybe relevant. Fine.
So, just some highlights here, and we'll talk more about it in the spoiler section. But Harry makes a decision to go into the castle to retrieve Albus and come back.
I hate it.
Dumb decision.
Worst.
You have a wand. There's no way you can signal in any way, shape, or form that, hey, there's problems here. Sparks into the air.
Yeah.
Some sort of like a loud blinding light, something.
Wait. So for the first task, he used a summoning spell to get his broom. He just used a summoning spell on Dumbledore. Just yank Dumbledore. He's talking to Snape, and he just goes flying across the castle.
I just didn't picture him with that same, like, dead face of Flitwick flying across his classroom with Neville.
Exactly.
Yeah, that same, like, I can't believe this is happening.
Accio Dumbledore.
Yeah. That would be a better option than leaving Krum alone and wandering, but whatever.
That was so... Why couldn't they both carry him? So many questions. So many questions. None of it's good. So, shockingly, Krum gets attacked. Who could have seen that?
Props to Albus for listening to Harry and being like, yep, this is the problem. Let's go. There's an instance here where Albus silently issues a spell towards Hagrid's hut, and this ghostly bird comes out of his wand. He just silently used a Patronus. Igor comes out after some discussion on Hagrid's involvement in this whole thing. Gets Igor. Igor rants at Albus. He spits in his direction. Hagrid nearly kills him.
Yep.
Like, one arm pinned to a tree, feet dangling, and...
Hagrid's got no time for your Dumbledore disrespect.
Dumbledore is not calm here. This is an instance that he is not calm because he says sharply, he yells, he raises his voice on multiple occasions.
And he was calm when Harry got his name out of the fire, so he can handle a lot of stress, but this is
a little bit above. So there's a lot going on. We will end it here.
Yep.
We will come back with it in the spoiler section, so stick with us and we will be right back.
Kill the stag!
Texting between two different kinds of phones makes photos blurry, like messy, and security risky. Not just that, it also makes sharing photos or even simply video calling, editing messages, or leaving a group nearly impossible. With WhatsApp, everyone can enjoy seamless messaging with the added protection of end-to-end encryption. Streamline your messages across all devices on WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
All right, so we were back with the spoiler section, but we're still going to talk some non-spoiler stuff here because there's still a lot to break down with the whole Krum, Harry, Crouch scenario.
Yeah.
So what did you want to start with?
Okay, well, one thing I wanted to build on from the last time I was on, I went on a Snape rant. And I just want to also point out, because apparently I'm just going to keep building evidence about why I don't like Snape, like slowly while we do these chapters. And it came up in this chapter when Harry makes the ill-fated decision to leave Krum with Mr. Crouch and to run and get Dumbledore. He runs up to Dumbledore's office. He can't get in. The password from last year no longer works. So he runs down the hall to try to see if Dumbledore's in the staff room. And he hears behind him noise. He goes back. He sees Snape. Snape standing outside of Dumbledore's office, very clearly just got done talking with Dumbledore. And he's trying to say, I need to talk to Dumbledore. Please let me in. This is urgent. Something's going on. And Snape just keeps shooting him down. Snape's like,
He takes glee in the panicked nature of Harry.
He does. And he keeps, the headmaster's too busy for you. Oh, he can't see you now. Oh, why do you think he's saying all of these things and he's not. I dislike so much that I know that Snape doesn't like him, but if some student is running up to you panicked, being like, I need to talk to the headmaster, why are you not asking what's going on? Why are you not at least being like, what is it about? Why do you need to see him? Or going with Harry into Dumbledore's office to be like, hey, this kid showed up, and if it's something trivial, then, deal with him later. But I hate this immediate stonewalling of anything that Harry is stressed about by Snape.
The nice thing is now we're in the spoiler section, so I could respond with anything.
Yeah.
So I will say for Snape, he does do this later in the books, where he does take Harry more seriously and is like, I should check this out.
Yeah. I give him tons of credit for Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah. Immediately, right, following these events, he shows an example of doing that. Here, he doesn't view anything to be in, like, that kind of danger. So he's kind of just dismissing it very easily.
Yeah.
I understand having, like, an eye roll here. Mm-hmm. But this is a level of petty that's unnecessary.
Yes.
So
exactly. Be frustrated with him. Think he's a drama queen. At least figure out why he's freaking out.
Yes.
And then decide he's being.
That would be the responsible teacher thing to do.
Yes.
But, sometimes Snape just likes to be Snape.
Yep. Snape being Snape. So when Dumbledore happens to come down, very good luck on that part. Harry tells him what's going on. He's described as being mildly curious. He has a mildly curious expression on his face, which I feel like that's just Dumbledore's normal face.
Yeah. Dumbledore here, in this whole scene, not just him meeting up with Harry, but I think this is some of the best you can say about Dumbledore. He doesn't blink twice at what Harry's telling him.
Nope.
He's like, let's go do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now you could wonder why. Is he, like, already aware that something's off? Maybe he has his own reservations about Barty Crouch.
Yeah.
Like, he's looked off before when I've seen him.
Yeah.
All of these rumors and whispers coming out of the ministry is like, hey, something's not right about Barty Crouch.
Yeah.
So maybe he has his own misgivings.
Well, and we've also had the very abnormal Triwizard Tournament of Champions with 4 champions instead of 3.
Correct.
So we still haven't figured out why Harry was entered, how he was entered.
Correct.
So there is still some mystery that needs to be figured out.
And I get it's Harry, and there are a lot of reasons why Dumbledore would listen to Harry more than the average teacher. Because,
Right.
I mean, shoot, McGonagall will probably eye roll at him and be like, what are you talking about, Potter? Get back to bed. I mean, let's be real about it.
Yeah.
So he has a little bit more reason to be like, I should probably listen to this kid.
Yeah. I think at least in McGonagall's defense, hypothetical defense, she would hear him out and then tell him that he's being ridiculous.
Probably, yeah.
Snape just likes tormenting the kid.
That's true. There is that difference.
Yeah.
But I just love Dumbledore's readiness to be like, what you got? Like, tell me what you got. And we've made a lot of Harry holding on to information for as long as he possibly can. He's been much better about, as soon as he hears something interesting, letting people know about it.
Yes.
He's been very good in this book about it. So, good on you, Harry, for that. Obviously, this is an emergent situation.
Yeah.
But, my goodness, why was this the option that was played? Why did you have to specifically run all... I can't imagine. This probably took a good... And I'll give Harry some athleticism points, but this still had to take like a good 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Plus to get there.
I would say like 10, 15 minutes.
At least.
One way, and then to get back.
Right.
So, I mean, already you've left him at least half an hour plus 5 minutes trying to argue with Snape and grab Dumbledore. So, I mean, 35 minutes approximately between when he leaves Krum and when he comes back. That's a long time.
Why couldn't you have gone to the hut and just knocked on Hagrid's door? Which was 5 minutes away.
I can understand.
Not even 5 minutes away.
I don't think that he knows at this point any actual magic that could solve his... I mean, unless we want to summon Dumbledore through the castle, which personally I'm in favor of. But, other than that, I don't think that they know...
Beard flowing behind him as he's whizzing by.
Oh, man. I want to see a visual on this now. This would be hilarious. But, so, I don't think he knows the levitating spell yet. I don't know that they can, pull people...
He probably knows sparks, though. He could, send up some fireworks.
But, if you're not looking out, how are you going to get... you might get some kids' attention. What adult is going to be paid? I feel like...
has windows.
Yeah, but if he's talking this, there's... So, I can kind of understand from that perspective, he might not be able to use magic. I don't understand. He and Krum are, in decent shape. I know...
Krum could know magic. Krum knows magic.
Well, okay, true. We don't know what magic Krum knows. What could have been helpful.
He's obviously very capable at this point, so...
True. Why couldn't they just pick him up and carry him?
Yep, that's another option.
That's what, and then also, what you said, maybe going to the hut would have been a good idea, or...
Screaming bloody murder.
Right,
would have done something.
Shooting sparks and yelling and dragging him while you're doing it. I mean, there are so many options.
Yep.
That are non-magical, really, when you think about it.
Yep.
Couldn't he? Why didn't we saw this at the beginning? Well, I guess it's large because he doesn't
literally
know how to do
the
it,
worst non-magical option he could have chosen.
Oh, 100%. There's nothing worse he could have done in that situation than running away and leaving Krum with Crush. Now, the one thing that I absolutely loved about this, so Dumbledore gets there, uses his Patronus to go to Hagrid's. Up until this point, we've only seen Patronus as being used to dispel Dementors.
Correct.
So we only really see them as being directed towards an object. So one of two things has happened, aside from him silently casting it, which is pretty.
That's a baller move.
It's so baller.
That is a master level move.
He's impressive. There are two options here. Either he sent the Patronus and then the Patronus brought Hagrid back. That's one option. They don't explicitly say what's going on with this. So it leaves a little bit open. Or two, which we later see in at least Deathly Hallows, but I feel like we see it at another point that I could not remember. He sends it with a message, and then the Patronus could say the message, which I absolutely love. I just love that.
That's a cool use of I think they developed that in Deathly Hallows. I don't know that that's a thing until Deathly Hallows.
Until, why can't I remember his name?
Kingsley.
Yeah, Kingsley Shacklebolt uses it, and it's so iconic and beautiful.
I feel like it's I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure, they took Harry's coin idea from the DA and applied it to Patronus's. Because you can't fake a Patronus. It is what it is. So if you know the Order of the Phoenix Patronuses, and you get a message from one of those... Yeah.
Then it all makes sense.
So I think that was a bit of magic that they developed for that.
I don't remember that ever being... Maybe I just don't remember... I don't remember the seventh book as well as I do the other ones, but maybe I just missed that. But I didn't remember it ever being explicitly stated, other than just I remember Shacklebolt using it and being
I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how they did it.
Okay. We'll fact check you when we get there.
I'm sure plenty of people will.
But yeah, so I love that he silently does it. I love that there's now more than one use for a Patronus. There's a lot to be said for that. Moody's very quick to be on the scene.
Stunning, huh?
Crazy.
He did say he used the Marauders map a little bit. But that being said, he also said he summoned it, which means he wasn't probably in his office.
Right.
When this whole thing broke.
Why did he feel the need to summon it if he didn't know that there was something going on?
Yeah.
Doesn't add up.
Again, spoiler section.
Right, so we're good to talk about it.
We are good to talk about it. Props to Crouch Sr. because he says, I escaped. Yeah. He broke the Imperious charm that he was under. Yes. Which is no small task. Okay, side note. One, it's no small task for him to do. Right. Two, I guess you could flip it around and be like, Barty Crouch Jr., his son, must have prodigious skill in this, because a mind like Barty Crouch Sr. cannot be an easy thing to override. I had imagined Barty Crouch Sr. with, a Ravenclaw background, yes, but a high-ranking member of the Ministry of Magic, who was tabbed to, or Minister of Magic, He knows over 200 languages, apparently. His mind is sharp.
Yes.
And you were able to rework that to your own advantage? That's...
Yeah, no, he's not a figure to be trifled with.
Senior mentions in his non-lucid thing, he like goes back into like this time jump backwards.
That was wild.
It was crazy. And he mentions that his son got 12 owls, 12 OWLs.
Is that even possible?
So, okay, there's 7 classes that you take, right? There's 7 classes at the beginning that you take, right?
Yeah.
And then after your second year, you get to add 2 more.
Okay.
That's 9. How do you get 12?
He's just that good.
Like, what are you doing? Like,
he's the kid in school where they just create classes for. We had a kid like that at my high school who was really good in Spanish, and my high school didn't offer AP Spanish. They only offered Spanish 4 honors or whatever. So they created AP Spanish for this kid. Like, that's Barty Crouch Jr.
Okay, so that's an interesting example. So here's my question. There's, I guess, 3 plausible ways he did this.
Okay.
1, he just Hermioned it and took all of the classes all at once and just ate it.
Time turners everywhere.
Well, 2 would be you have to use the time turner to do all of that.
Right.
So now you're giving Barty Crouch Jr. a time turner, which is an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Altogether. I guess the other option is you just take your normal owls, do studying on your own, and you just show up for the test, and you just take the test. Like a whole catch me if you can.
Yeah.
How did you pass the bar? I studied. I just did it. Like, I just showed up, took the test, and I passed. Like, I'm brilliant. So...
I'm just that good.
12.
That is a ton of owls.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then he seems to be like, meh, you could have done better.
How?
Like, didn't you get that vibe from...
I did.
Like, even though in his, like, weird state that he was in, he was just like, you got 12. Could have gotten 14 if you had applied yourself.
What a failure.
Yeah, right? Like, my goodness gracious. And then it's like, Hermione's the best of her year. Cedric's the best student at Hogwarts now.
Yeah.
I don't know that either of them are getting 12 owls. Like, which just goes to show you, like, there are students at this school throughout the years. Like, my goodness.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So, you say owls instead of OWLs.
I go in between, but yeah, either way.
I was just curious. I always read it as owls.
I always see it as owls, so I'll just say owl, just like I say spew. Like, I'm just going to, whatever. I'm going to say the acronym
I
or whatever.
pronounce the acronym too. Okay.
Anyway, also want to go back to, really quick, the Karkaroff moment. So Karkaroff, first of all, justifiably upset that his champion star student, international Quidditch star, was attacked on school grounds.
Oh, I would be so mad.
I would be livid.
Yeah.
He has every right to be upset.
Definitely.
And which Dumbledore acknowledges. He's like, hey, I get it.
Yeah.
This is a problem. We'll figure it out. He handles it as well as he could. The spitting in Albus's direction, you know what? I'm not even going to hate on it because he didn't spit on him, just in his direction.
It's not great,
right?
But I'm okay with it,
right?
Because it didn't hit him.
Correct. Hagrid, though, my goodness.
Everyone in this situation needs anger management issues.
I think Hagrid had. We saw it all the way back in Sorcerer's Stone, way back when. Yeah. There is one thing.
Yep.
You cannot do around Hagrid.
Yep.
And that is insult this man.
He will not take it.
He does not take well to it.
No.
And we've talked about, you just mentioned Albus being the architect of everything. You can't tell me that part of that architecture was not instilling fierce loyalty in some useful pawns. I'm not saying Hagrid or Lupin are pawns.
Yeah.
They're better than pawns. But still, fierce loyalty in chips on the board.
Yes. I have a bit of a conflict with that because I agree with the underlying point that you're saying, but I also feel like Dumbledore is the kind of person who, like, does genuinely care about the people.
Sure.
So I think it's more like establishing crucial relationships and friendships than, like, pawns. Like, because pawn to me, and I'm being pedantic for myself here, but pawn to me implies, like Voldemort would have pawns. Because Voldemort wouldn't care about them. I do think...
That's why I upped it to, more than a pawn.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. 100% I'm with you on that.
If he is the leader of this whole thing, I think the Order of the Phoenix are generals.
Yeah.
And then you go down the ranking. But
I could definitely see that.
Hagrid's an enforcer. You're hiring an enforcer.
Right.
Of
Definitely.
Not that Albus needs it. That's the crazy thing. He doesn't. But
Albus gains some power through having good relationships.
Yes.
And doesn't always need them, but I think
he cares.
Help. Yeah.
He obviously cares.
Yeah.
He cares about Harry.
Yeah.
But what ultimately is Harry?
Yeah.
It's
right.
A means to an end.
Right.
Is the ultimate thing.
This is how you choose to look at Dumbledore. And if you think Dumbledore is kind of good or neutral or bad, is how you think he's managing these types of things. Because I don't understand why both things can't be true. I do think he cares very deeply about Harry. I do think he has good intentions with things. I do think that he did also see that the way out of this is through Harry's sacrifice.
Yeah.
But
and
can you really do
there's that iconic
that?
line that I'll always hear in Alan Rickman's voice, rest in peace, is you're leading a pig to slaughter. That's this whole thing. Right. So you don't care about him, you don't care about whatever. This is him being upset at this, figuring out this whole thing. Right. But he's like, you're just using all of us, is the idea.
But everything can be true.
Yes, everything can be true. There's just layers, and then you're measuring what's more valuable, one side or the other, and
substantial nuance, and that's why this is such a great thing to discuss.
Absolutely. It's almost like we're doing a podcast.
Crazy. So one thing that I do want to point out in this scene, though, that really bothers me is not only the fact that no one wants to ask any questions. Karkaroff just shows up and is like, "You hurt my champion. You're out to get me. Everything's terrible." He doesn't ask, "How did he get hurt? What's going on?"
Well, here's the thing.
What was the circumstances that led to this? The dumbest thing in my mind about all of this is Krum was the one who asked Harry to go on the walk. This wasn't premeditated.
The whole thing, I'm thinking Albus knows, first of all, he does the responsible thing in including Karkaroff as early as humanly possible in this conversation, which is the adults. Yes. There are a lot of quote unquote leaders that step would be further down the line. It would be well, how can I watch my own here instead of doing starting to figure out how can I explain this away first instead of no, let's get everybody that needs to be on this conversation, and on this conversation we'll figure it out. Yeah. Very responsible thing for Albus to do. Yeah. But do you ever think he's watching or waiting for Karkaroff to come over and being like, he's going to ask how this happened? And then the answer to that is not a good answer. It's the right answer. But when I tell him that his own champion is saying that it's a judge in the tournament, this will not go well.
He's in this situation, and he fully understands that it's a really bad situation.
He has zero good answers. No. But again, he's aware of that, at least, and he's trying to speak to Karkaroff in a way of dude, you're right. Yeah. This is bad. Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good look.
If I were you, I'd be so mad.
Yep. I mean, what else can you say?
I know, right.
You have no other option.
He handles it in a very adult way.
He does.
He's really the only adult in this situation that we've seen who is handling it appropriately.
I like how you even get... So he's not calm in two situations. When Hagrid darn near kills Karkaroff. Yep. And he's like, Hagrid, absolutely not. Well, you got to stop this. Stop it.
Yeah. Again, you shouldn't be.
You shouldn't say that calmly. You'd be like, no.
Right.
And then the other one is Harry, get out. Get out of here. Your moment in this conversation has ended.
I love that.
You need to go.
Get out.
And then also, and Harry takes note of this too, is whatever you're thinking of doing right now, don't.
I wanted to bring that up too, because he explicitly says any owls you might want to send. So then the first time I read it, because I actually read that part twice for this prep. The first time I read it, I said, okay, so he knows what's going on at his school because he knows that the owls are coming and going with letters to Sirius. However, which you should probably know what's going on, but just another demonstration of him having this grand view of all of the things that are happening. But second time I reread it, Harry mentions that Dumbledore says, any owls you might want to send, when he, at that very moment, was thinking about going to send owls. So it's not necessarily an educated guess on Dumbledore's part that Harry was immediately going to go and send an owl to Sirius. This is, again, another thing that has come up where Harry has described Dumbledore in the past as having piercing eyes. Harry has described Dumbledore as seemingly knowing what's going on without him saying or without him thinking. He's gotten feelings from Dumbledore that Dumbledore is seeing more to Harry than what Harry's actually letting on. So this is, again, another situation where it heavily hints towards Dumbledore is peeking into Harry's mind.
Yes. With Harry's comment about that, it's hard to kind of ignore that thought process of legilimens being used.
Yes. But there's one more thing I think we need to point out in this chapter, and it's a throwaway line, but it's a throwaway line that's my absolute favorite. They're talking about, there's a brief section in here where Hermione is still trying to figure out how Rita Skeeter knows about the conversation that she had with Krum that was in the Witch Weekly article. That's why she's getting all of the hate. Mm-hmm. And Ron says, I forget exactly what his example is, and she scolds him and says, if you had read Hogwarts: A History, that wasn't possible.
Love those mentions.
I know, I love that. And then Harry goes, well, maybe you've been bugged.
Oh, yes.
And Ron's like, what does that mean? And Harry explains that being bugged is, there's a listening device somewhere and they're tapping your phone or they're doing whatever in a muggle concept.
Yep.
And then that kind of gets dismissed. But I love the word choice. It's so beautiful.
That's just JK playing with us.
I love it so much.
Yeah, that's just her
it's
being
just
like...
little tease here.
Yep. That's just her having fun with wordplay.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It's my favorite.
So with that, we will wrap it up for Chapter 28, The Madness of Mr. Crouch. Hopefully we've encapsulated all of the madness of Mr. Crouch in this chapter. Let us know what you think on Twitter and Instagram, and leave us a review on Spotify. That would really, really help out. You can also leave us a voice message. Give us a shout, give us a look, and thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.